Hello, Unicorners. Oh my God, have we got a treat for you today. We have got the amazing Peter Richards from Protolabs, who we met at the B2B Marketing Awards just after they had scooped the prize for thought leadership. Now, if you are interested in the concepts like thought leadership, if you are interested in how business-to-business organizations can make use of pay-per-click advertising, do not go away. I am Dom Horse.
And I'm Samantha Lucy.
And we are the co-hosts of this, Unicorny. Unicorns, they're supposed to be rare, but they seem to be everywhere. Now, like you, I suspect, I devour business and marketing books. But if you've noticed, more and more of them use the same reference material, and they retrofit the strategies and tactics they're espousing to unicorns. Well, you know what? I'm bored of reading about unicorns. So what if Amazon thinks back to front? Why is it relevant to me that Steve Jobs started with why? Google, Facebook, Netflix, those guys, it's not where I live professionally, and it doesn't inform my future. So I thought, why don't I do something about it? Why not create a body of reference material that ordinary marketers like me can contribute to and learn from? And that is Unicorny. Now, Samantha, you come from Unity. Tell me a little bit about your agency.
So we are a communications consultancy, and we, I think, really specialize when it comes to insight and strategy and getting under the skin of an audience. And what we love to do, because I'm a nerd at heart, but no one believes it, is take all the data we can find, layer that with behavioral science, and really pull together insights that unlock briefs. And we get to do that for a lot of really exciting clients that are not always the sexiest brands, but we get to do the sexiest stuff because we get the best audience insights.
Cool. Well, today we have a guest who, if you don't know about it, it might look like an unsexy business.
100%. But then when I hear about that data, to me, that suddenly says sexy.
But also, rapid prototyping, 3D printing. I think it's pretty sexy. Let's go see what Peter's got to say.
Sounds good.
Hello, Peter. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Tom.
A good start to today's podcast might be for you to give us a little bit of an introduction to Protolabs, because although it's a very large company, many of our listeners may not have heard of you.
Yeah, sure. So we're, in simple terms, a digital manufacturer. So we make component parts that go into all parts of the supply chain. The unique element of what we can do is, with our technology, we can actually get a part into the production supply chain as fast as a day. So we use 3 different technologies. So one's injection molding. So that's what you'll see inside your car. So your dashboard will be injection molded. CNC machining. So that's basically cutting away and using predominantly metal in terms of cutting away and looking at parts that are produced in that way. And then the final one, which most people would have heard on, is 3D printing or additive manufacturing. And that's the sexy, basically, technology as well that we're involved in. We've got manufacturing facilities, 8 manufacturing facilities across the globe. Our route to market is e-commerce, so we sell through the web. And basically the way that we operate is, if somebody's got a design drawing for their part that they want, they come onto our website, they upload that design drawing, and basically we will give them a price back basically in a couple of hours. If they're happy with that quote, they can order it, and as I mentioned earlier, we can then produce it and ship it in as fast as a day. So that the whole basis of where we were founded from was our founder, a guy called Larry Lucas, who set the organisation up in the States just over 20 years ago now, was involved in prototyping and was frustrated with the design cycle that you go through in terms of producing parts to prototype. So he wrote some very clever code that then enables us to actually drive that manufacturing process and enables us to get parts out in a very rapid time scale. So the essence of our brand promise is manufacturing accelerated, and we support organisations that range from Formula One all the way through to medical, consumer electronics, even into organisations such as SpaceX as well. So a very broad range of organisations that we support.
And how many people work for Protolabs?
So we've got globally, we've got just over 2,500 people. Obviously, our processes in terms of the way that we operate is it's automated through the manufacturing process. So actually, our factories aren't awash with people, as you would have seen. Well, I'm giving an analogy here of going back to Victorian days, but it's very heavily automated. And really, what we've got is a digital thread that goes all the way through from basically the customer's inquiry that comes in through the web, all the way through to physical delivery of the part. And in a lot of cases, we can do that with zero touch.
Okay, and you, I mean, so 25 years in existence, and you've scaled from literally a garage
Yes.
to 2,500 people.
Yeah.
How important has marketing been on that journey for your organisation?
Huge, really. And for me, I've been in B2B marketing now, nearly 25 years. Myself in terms of roles that I've been involved with. This is the first role that I've had where I'm second on the agenda in the boardroom. So it goes finance and then it goes marketing.
Okay.
So from that point of view, it's critically important because it's seen as demand for the business. There is a reflection that our founder had, which was when he set the organisation up, he put a little bit of money towards Yahoo, as it was in the day, in terms of Yahoo advertising to try and generate demand. That worked, and then it's grown from there. So PPC for us still is a key route to market. It's a challenging route to market for us because our competitive landscape's changed as well. So whilst we were founded 25 years ago and we had a real USP in terms of that speed, and we still do, we've got a competitive environment that's shifted as well. So we've got other manufacturers that are coming into the same space as us, that are reducing their manufacturing timescales as well. So that makes our brand promise even more important, that we've got to deliver on that as well, and also how we can educate the market from an online point of view and get that message out there is critically important. So that whole point about marketing on top of the funnel is massively important for the business. We're an organisation that loves data, and we've got a lot of data. It enables us to actually manage each level of the funnel. So I can see where I am with my sessions, what they're doing to converting into an engaged inquiry, coming into the website, all the way through then that converting to a prospect, then also to a quote, and then to a customer, and I can look at all the conversion rates at each stage of that process.
Okay, so I think we're going to dig into kind of the performance marketing aspect of how you guys do things a little bit later. But I think a really good place to start might be at the beginning of your journey with Protolabs. And at this stage, my co-host, Samantha, I'm going to hand over to you because you know a lot more about this than me. But I was fascinated when we were talking about setting today up, that when you joined the organization, the marketing was very much product-led and you had a different idea than that.
Yeah, I think, I came into the business, just over 3 years ago now, where, it was twofold, really. We'd got a team that had been, to a degree, unmanaged, because my predecessor had been out of the business for over 12 months. So it was then coming back into the business and looking at, the first thing is, and my team will hear me out on this, you can't keep doing the same thing and expect a different result, because I think that's clinically insane if you take that approach. So we had to do something different in terms of engagement.
And what was it that you were doing at that time that you had to shift? What was the thing that was kind of going to unlock it? What was the same thing that we're trying to get the same results out of that you came into?
I think it was more from the point of view of, we manufacture parts really quickly. Come and buy some. In its simplest sense.
Yeah.
And when your product doesn't change, what else do you say?
Absolutely.
So how do you then get the narrative to go to a different level and also get a different level of engagement with a different set of customers is also the challenge.
And did you rock up and decide, I need to take a really good look around me, I need to understand who are these audiences, because it's so disparate, isn't it? You've got this kind of real broad spectrum of sectors. Yeah. Was there a kind of first let me have a look around me, first 100 days kind of feel to it, or were you straight into, let's just change things, we can't keep doing the same thing, what's going to make a difference, what's going to move the dial?
I think on your point, Samantha, I think in any role that you go into, you can't go in with the bull in a china shop syndrome. So there was a period of reflection, seeing what we were doing. We were doing some good things. We were doing some things that we could do better, and we weren't doing some things. So it was then looking at it in terms of those categories and building on what we were doing well, but then also what we weren't doing and what we were missing and what we could amplify. We'd also done some work which was starting to look at sectors for us that converted quickest. So we'd also done some further analysis, and in fairness, I walked into this where there was work that had been done which was looking at the conversion rates for key sectors. So we knew that automotive was important for us because it converted quickly, and also we could see aerospace. again being a potential market for us as well to further develop. Both sectors are innovation led as well, because they need to keep moving forward themselves. So we then did some further work to go, right, okay, how do we get deeper into those sectors? And that's really where we spawned the thought leadership approach, which was how we start to get a broader narrative into those sectors at a wider and higher level, as opposed to we manufacture parts really quickly, which we do, and we do it really well.
So you've got all these different pieces that you've kind of assembled together. You understand the sectors that you've got the fastest kind of entrance into, and you've looked at some things that you do well and some things that you're missing. And that kind of, how did you piece all those bits together to then get to, okay, it's thought leadership and it's going to look like this?
I think the first thing that we did was, what space do we want to try and occupy in the first instance? A lot of that was around innovation, because that's at the core of what we do. We can own that space because we're involved in that innovation process and that product design process. Yeah. So that was the first thing where we sort of came around that theme, so to speak. And it was then saying, right, okay, what's missing in the marketplace from an innovation discussion point within those sectors that we could, and I think your words, we could own.
Yeah.
And try and develop from that point of view. And then also looking at our client base and going, right, okay, what are they involved with from a discussion point? How could we start a narrative that could actually start to angle us into that audience as well?
Yeah, that's really interesting because, as I said, and as you said, you've got these really disparate sectors, right? So you've got, in a way, a sort of profession-specific audience, but that reaches across lots of verticals? Or is it actually that there are really would your audience mapping just scare the shit out of most people?
In the main, it's design engineers. So,
right.
So if I look at it from a common thread into who we're targeting, it is those design engineers. Yes, it spans into procurement. Yes, it spans into innovation teams.
Our favourite people. We love procurement.
Well, they're there for a reason. I understand, it also spans into looking at R&D teams as well. Yeah, coming back to your does it scare the shit out of people in terms of the positioning? I don't believe it does, because I think any organisation's got quite a broad map of stakeholders that they'd engage with. The difference that we've got is that we can go from a transactional sale of, say, £500 all the way through to a transactional sale of, say, £250,000. Crazy. So the added complexity is then I've got a volume of business that is coming through that are small transactions that I actually need to get zero touch on. And then I've got a high touch element, which are the key accounts, which are critically important to us, but the volume isn't as strong and they take longer to develop. But I've got to be doing both at the same time. Of course. And what has your approach to that been? Have you taken with those kind of key accounts more of an ABM approach, or has it been very much that sort of brand, always on, slow burn next to a really kind of targeted set of sales proposals and the way that you come after that audience? How do you balance out the immediate with the longer term in that respect? Really good question, because the other added challenge that we've got is at an ABM level. In previous lives where I've done ABM, you're strategically important to the customer, and the value of your sale gets you up there in the customer. Yeah. The challenge that we've got is that in a lot of cases with some of our clients, we are important to them, but their level of spend with us doesn't raise our profile in the organisation. Right, got it. So you've got that element of complexity to it. So if say, for example, we went to the head of R&D at another automotive manufacturer and said, this is what we do, it is more than likely he would go, you're fantastic, understand what you do, right, okay, you need to speak to this person. Yeah. He wouldn't necessarily have an active engagement with us. Understood, okay. So I think there's that challenge in terms of how we then run things from a parallel point of view with ABM. But from an ABM perspective, it's been something which we've been developing. Mm-hmm. It's starting to work. Mm-hmm. What we're also starting to do is we've done a lot of work in terms of educating the client base. Interesting. Because the other point that we then get to is we have a quoting platform, and if design engineer A in Aston Martin uses us, it doesn't necessarily mean that design engineer B does.
Right.
So how you then get the internal cross-sell within the business. So we do a lot of education to our clients to go, this is the benefit that we can bring you, and we try and get that community together in those organisations as well to raise the profile.
And what does that look like for you? Is that a lot of sort of really tight CRM management? Do you do round tables and thought leadership internally? How do you best kind of network inside a business that you're already connected to?
I think it's combination of things, really. Within today's environment, we've been running a lot of webinars with clients and getting, and actually it's a very effective way of getting about 20 people all together on a call for an hour. And if you're doing communication with a purpose, it works. And it works really well because you can educate them from that point of view. The other thing that we've then done is started to create bespoke material, which is focused in terms of almost like a manufacturing guide, how we support them on that basis and that journey. And that's tailored down at the account level as well. And then as we move back into face-to-face engagements, we are now doing more face-to-face engagements as well. That's starting to come back on online for us. We also bring clients into our facilities because actually seeing the power of the manufacturing actually operating and going, right, okay, there's your design drawing and there's your part.
Really impactful.
Exactly. Yeah. It makes a huge point. And we're starting to further evolve and develop video assets as well to try and further illustrate that and get deeper from that point of view. But the biggest challenge is how you get somebody's attention and engagement.
Which is always the challenge, isn't it? It's the absolute challenge. And then where does that sit for you in terms of trying to meter out between brand and engagement? And how does brand factor in your kind of, you say you're number 2 on the boardroom agenda, which is exciting but terrifying. Yeah. How does brand play into that?
Yeah, really good question, because the challenge that we've got is we're a heavily driven commercial organisation, which is great. It keeps you focused, you know what you need to deliver. But then in parallel, what you can then start to lose sight of is that you haven't done any brand building. Yeah. Because you're so myopically focused on
down sales funnel.
Right, okay, where are we with leads this week? Where are we with quotes this week? What's that converted to? And that's a conversation which most probably happens twice a week. With board members, from that point of view. And then, so it's very easy to turn around and go, oh, we've got a brand and we've not developed it, we've not pushed it out further. So part of the point, and actually coming back to some of the sector approach and ABM focus, was to go, right, how can we build a campaign that builds the brand, gets us exposure, but can also be used for demand generation?
Silver bullet.
Yeah. And that was also where we wanted to get to, because it was a shift for the business. And when we launched the first program, from a series point of view, which we targeted at the automotive sector, it was a leap of faith for the business.
Interesting.
Because we'd not done anything like that before as an organisation.
Was it hard to get that leap of faith? Because I think there are so many marketeers who sit in those difficult conversations where they've got sales versus brand, and they're wanting to invest in brand. And a lot of our clients do the same thing, where they're very kind of focused on the sales funnel, and that leap of faith is hard. How did you take the organisation with you?
I think on a couple of levels, really. One, it's that open communication, and going back to that principle that we stated earlier, if we want to change in results, we've got to do some different things. And there is a risk to it, but it's a calculated risk. Yeah. So you're not betting, the whole of the organisation on what one, strategy and principle from that point of view. So I think there's that point. Second point is, and I know it's cliched, but it's communication, and it's engagement with your own organisation, engagement with sales. And we had a lot of conversations with sales to try and educate them about, right, this is different. This is going to be a different approach. These are going to be the key messages that we're going to be putting out to the market, and how we get that alignment. And if I reflect back from where we are now to where we were when we launched the approach, if I look at the response that we got from the organisation when we launched it, which was, okay, we'll go with you. Okay,
begrudgingly, but they went with you.
We'll go with you. You're the new boy. You've come in.
You can mess up. We don't mind.
Exactly. It's your P45 sort of scenario.
Well, I love it. I'm going to use that.
Whereas now, and I was on a call this week, which was with sales and marketing on the same call, and I'd got the sales team unprompted, talking about how they were completely aligned with marketing, taking the marketing assets, aligning from that point of view,
Amazing.
looking at the campaigns, getting a complete understanding from that point of view. So that's night and day from where we were.
It must have been a proud moment for you, actually, to sort of, you must have gone, okay, we did something right here.
Yeah.
Things.
Yeah, I think you take, you take the small comments. The other, important thing for me is, you feed that back into the team. So the team need to recognise that. And any organisation's got a short memory.
Very short.
And I think, it's also being able to take that point in time to reflect and go, right, okay, this is what we've done well. And how do we build from that, from that perspective? And then the other thing is, that we continually look at is how we drive more innovation into the business. How we continue to do different things, how we get people to learn, so that they can actually lift their heads up from, their day job and get outside of the building and try and learn a bit more to what's going on in the industry as well from that side of things.
So I just want to wind back a little bit, because the overriding theme is what you won your award for, which is thought leadership, I believe. Yeah. So, and a B2B marketing award is no small award, right? So congratulations, first off, because I think that's where we met. When you came to the organisation, we've been talking slightly around it, but we haven't actually nailed this. How did you persuade your colleagues that thought leadership, which must have been very alien to the kind of product-based approach marketing, how did you persuade them that thought leadership was the right way forward?
2 levels, really. First of all, I'd done it before and I'd got success from it before. So I was able to illustrate success from where I'd been previously. And secondly, Dom, I think it does go back to that point of, right, okay, what's the alternative? If we want to build a presence in these sectors that we know convert quicker for us, how do we get more engaged in those sectors? So you play back to the strategy.
Okay.
So that was the other key thing that we I wouldn't say learned, but it's more from a adaptation point of view, which is, right, you understand your organisation strategy, you understand the business strategy, and you therefore build your programme which is directly aligned to that. And I'm not saying it's then a shoe-in and you're going to get agreement, but it's harder then for any dissent, because you can go, right, this is what we've set out as the strategy, this is what we believe is right, this is what the stats tell us, so therefore we're going to build a programme that completely underpins that, as well as driving demand generation. And that was the other thing that, compared to previous lives, a lot of my thought leadership has all been about brand positioning and brand awareness. With Protolabs and the commercial drive that we've got and the growth drive that we've got as an organisation, it was that parallel running that we had to do. So I think that was the element in terms of that sell back into the organisation from that perspective.
So a lot of people listening to this are going to be marketers in organisations that haven't yet scaled to the degree that you have, but they may be just as commercially driven. So if you're going to give them one takeaway, would it be that if you want to change engines mid-flight, only change one at a time? Introducing thought leadership when you're not actually dismantling the existing marketing program.
Yeah.
I can see then you're morphing things. Right? It's an evolution, not revolution.
Yeah, exactly. And I think and again, coming back to that earlier comment about how we're targeted and measured. If, for example, I go 4 weeks without any prospect generation because I'm doing fantastic brand awareness and thought leadership, that 4 weeks has become a trend in our business, and we're then bombing. So how do you then turn that back around? So you've got to do that parallel, activity from that point of view, and you've got to be able to also, in an organisation that is heavily driven by the numbers, and I know every organisation is, but from a marketing point of view, I could go the other way with my finance director, which is, well, you get so much return for your ROAS on PPC is 4-1. So why are you putting money into brand activity? Because your ROAS there's no ROAS in that in terms of what you're doing. So just put it into PPC.
And there are plenty of organisations that do exactly that, by the way. And short term they do well. And long term they decline because of course they don't have a brand.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what the added complexity that and going back to that brand positioning piece, if I wind the clock back 5 years, when I looked at the data, we had an impression share of about 80%. On all of our, external positioning from a paid point of view. If I look at it now, it's reduced because the competitive landscape's changed. So because that competitive landscape's changed, I've then got to do more work to try and build that brand profile and get the education out there. And it really is a balance. At the moment, when I came into the organisation, it was most probably 90-10. 90% demand generation, 10% on brand. We're at a stage now where we're moving towards most probably 39% brand or just pure brand work. With the remainder, my maths has suddenly gone out of my head.
So 40-60, that's
40,
pretty
60.
good.
In terms of that position, that's where we're trying to get to. Because the added complexity that we've got is you can't just keep thinking that you're going to grow continually without any evolution and without having product enhancements. So it's not as if we're changing the way that we produce things dramatically. Yes, we'll get more materials we can use to produce things with. Yes, we'll get a few more technologies we can do in 3D printing that we can use from a development point of view. But fundamentally, the offer's the same.
You guys have obviously had tremendous success in terms of kind of PPC and how it's evolved for you and starting out with Yahoo and then moving to now. What do you think about the future of that? Because it kind of becomes a black hole, doesn't it, into which you just have to keep throwing more money to get the same results?
Yeah, it's heartburn. I'd describe it as. Because when you look at the amounts of money that you're paying... and we're in a really competitive marketplace. So from that point of view, you continually question, how can we get more out of this? So there's that point. The other point is then, how you further build up your SEO strategy to supplement your PPC as well from that point of view. Also then, beauty of Google, they changed something in the algorithm and it's not performing as it was. So you then go back to your online team and you're having the conversation and it's kind of, well, that's how it is. So it's something we continually review.
Yeah.
We've got guys that are continually working on it. And it is challenging. It's really challenging from that point of view. And I think we are starting to get to this viewpoint of where do we see diminishing returns? It's at that level now where we're trying to do that analysis to go, right, actually, we're throwing money at this, but we're not seeing the true return. We've done, as I mentioned earlier, we've done some fairly in-depth modelling now on our return on advertising spend, and we can see the countries now where it doesn't perform that well for us, where we're seeing a return of, say, below, if it, obviously below 1, it doesn't make sense. But we've got countries that are performing in that level.
Okay.
That's so interesting.
But then you then flick it and you look at it monthly. So you look at that annually and you go, oh, it's crap. You then look at it monthly and go, well, hang on, they had a 10-to-1 return in December. Why was that? And so you're then trying to go through that approach as well.
The problem, I can't mention numbers because obviously they're sensitive, but you have enormous, for B2B, a B2B organisation, I think you have an enormous Google budget. And the problem with the complexity of that is the more granular you go, the more confusing the results get. Correct. In my experience, as you say, because annually something doesn't make sense, monthly it might make sense. But then if you start looking at your ad distribution on, the highly targeted words into the long tail, at what stage do you stop analysing? I guess it's really hard. And I think a lot of B2B organisations partly don't bother because it's just too hard.
Yeah, and I think we've been at stages in meetings where we've had tense meetings with my online team, which is you're giving me information, I'm not getting any insight from this.
Yeah.
Tell me something.
Yeah. You've got to answer the so what, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we then go through attribution modelling, and we look at that, and then because that evolves retrospectively monthly, so you look at it 1 week, and that chart then gets shared out within the organisation. Everybody has a naked panic running down the corridors going, performance is really bad. And then you then come back a week later and the attribution's changed because that's the way it's done in GA.
Yeah,
do
absolutely.
Do you use any tools to help you manage the whole AdWords program? Because I know there are some pretty smart kind of, I won't call them middleware, but the kind of intermediary technologies that use a bit of AI to try and help you optimize. And
not at the moment. We've got a team of really talented individuals in that space.
Okay.
At the moment, so we're putting more into the people resource than say the automated resource in that element. Really, Don.
That's really interesting. I love that, as I always advocate human over AI in certain degrees. Is that because you find that that's the best way to kind of connect and make those human components make sense on top of the data? Because I think often data in isolation is just a number as opposed to a context and a set of things. And I think human beings are often very good at interpreting that data so that you have relativity.
Yes, I think, that's a fair point, Samantha, in terms of, we want to try and understand what's happening. Yes, Google will make recommendations on, different elements, which we do obviously take on board as well. But I think it's having the team there to actually try and analyse the results as opposed to us looking to put another software layer in. We are open to technology as a business. We do a lot of test and learn with other software platforms, but we've been burnt by that as well. A lot of the software doesn't necessarily.
Well, I think we're going to come on to that absolutely next. But before we go, let's get some takeaways for listeners on pay-per-click.
Yep.
So I'm a B2B organisation. This is really generic, but I'm going to put you on the point on the spot. Should I or should I not be using Google AdWords?
Should you or should you not be using Google AdWords? It depends upon your audience, I think, is the key thing.
Okay.
You need to really understand your audience and how they're accessing your service. The difference that we have with our service offering is there's an instant gratification, if I use that terminology, which is they'll click on the ad, and if they've got a CAD design, they'll go to get a quote. And so you can go, you've got that instant channel. If you're in an organisation, and if I take some of my previous roles where I've been in consulting, doing PPC for consulting doesn't necessarily make sense, because you are trying to do more about the depth of the organisation, the quality of the advice that's given, and you're leveraging that through advice that you're giving as well from a thought leadership point of view. So I think it's, I don't want to skirt the question and be a politician in my answer, but it is dependent upon your audience.
Okay. And do you believe that businesses that run a PPC campaign get an SEO lift?
Do you know, I don't know. We do a lot of work on SEO as well. So we monitor keywords on a monthly basis to make sure that they're performing well. The added complexity we've got is I've got 9 languages.
Ooh.
So I've got to do that in 9 languages as well. And my pidgin German and pidgin French, that makes it difficult. And it makes it difficult for the team, because my digital team is based in the UK. I've got regional marketeers that are then inputting on that basis. So does PPC give an SEO lift? I don't know, but we also, you can't do PPC without SEO.
Great answer. Okay. So I'm going to take this away as a summary from this little section of the podcast is, if you are B2B and you are in a sales process that isn't too complicated or deep, PPC might be a good place to look.
Correct.
But there's no point in doing it unless you already do SEO.
Correct.
Brilliant. Right. Let's move on to talk about the future. Because we discussed when we were talking about doing this podcast, AI and the use of technology in the sales pipeline and the sales channel. And I believe you guys did a lot of testing with kind of demand-based technology and trying to use intent-based data to predict sort of actions and activity from your customer bases. What was your experience with that?
Yeah, I think the sales pitch is great. I'll put that one across first. And I think those technologies work if you've got a single buyer in an organisation. Where, if you take our business, I've got, say, multiple design engineers in an automotive business. So knowing that somebody from Aston Martin has searched for prototyping and their journey before they got there, before they put that keyword in, with the intent-based marketing, I can't get it down to the individual level. So I've therefore, so I can't then alter my engagement strategy, because all I know is the blob. Yeah. I shouldn't use that because I am a client. The blob of the organisation,
the beautiful blob,
is searching for these. It is in these search terms. It doesn't help me. Now, the sales pitch would argue, right? Okay, you start to then do some more conditioning to educate that organisation about what you do, and ultimately it will come good.
That's kind of a big if, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, and I think that's the challenge that we found with it, which was we couldn't get down to that granular level of detail. So it may work for organisations where you've got a single buyer.
Yeah, I find intent data also throws up loads of false positives. I mean, that's our experience of it, that just because someone's searching for prototyping doesn't mean they want a prototype. No. They could be looking for a manual on prototyping, or a book on prototyping, or a job in prototyping, or an anything in prototyping, frankly.
Yeah.
So I get that. But you guys have found a better way of using technology to improve your conversions.
Yes. Yeah. So we've also then started to look at basically. We get a lot of customers come onto our platform that will just ask for a quote, and because the way our platform works is we provide. Yeah, I know it sounds cliched, free quotes, but so we provide a quote back on what they can produce. Now, what we were then seeing is how do we get that audience to convert quicker for us, because they've been given a quote, so we know there's an intent. From that point of view, and how can we use technology to try and assist in that process? So we've engaged with another AI tool, which is actually email based, which then stimulates the conversation with the customer. Which is, I notice you've received a quote. Is there anything we can help you with, or to try and drive them towards actually getting them to convert, or take a call from our sales team. It works in. Where are we? We've got it running in 4 languages. Okay. We had one instance where we had a design engineer sitting in Germany. AI agent reached out to this individual in German, obviously. The guy replied back in half German, half English, which was basically, I've just moved to Munich. Do you mind if we continue in English? The AI agent recognised that and replied back, resulted in a call, and resulted in a conversion.
Did the AI agent also reply back half German, half English?
Just replied back in English. Okay. But I think the beauty of it is, and going back to that earlier point as well, Dom, where we're looking at saying, right, okay, how can we start to automate some of that process for us? We're then getting more assistance into the sales queue, because what we are then providing into sales are your more highly qualified MQLs. Yeah. So you're moving away from, well, we've just created a list of people that have randomly hovered over our website, and we give that to sales to follow up. Yeah. There's no interest there. All the way into, right, this customer has said they want a call because of this interaction. So you're going through that qualification process, and for us it works.
Is there a percentage kind of transformation in terms of where that sits, how much converts from that?
From the ones that then come through from the agent, we've seen a 3-to-1 conversion.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. Wow. So it's been fantastic for us.
So you must have some good behavioural economists working on your team, because that kind of, automation done clumsily is the worst thing in the world. Yeah. And actually my favourite one, what I get all the time is, this is the last time I'll write to you. And they're trying to nudge me into doing something, but actually I'm thinking, excellent. I don't need to unsubscribe. Yeah. So it's a matter of you guys work with kind of behavioural nudges and stuff all the time.
We do.
And automation. Like, advice for people listening to this. How do you go about doing automation that works?
I think that's really complicated, and that, again, I think the answer to that is audience. Fundamentally, I think that something that is annoying to you, Dom, like, I'm going to stop writing to you now, for someone else is like deeply emotional, and they feel very moved by that, and they're going to write back, please Autobot, don't stop talking to me. And so I think that fundamentally, if you understand your audience well, then automation is a tool in a toolbox as opposed to the answer to everything. And so how you do it well really is fundamentally about understanding your brand, I think.
Yeah, and I'd also state, these things don't work out of the box. So for the AI
you have to try, don't you?
You train it. Okay. So you basically train it, and it's got certain skills, and you build up the skill profile. So again, from the learning point of view, and for any salespeople from a tech company listening, there's a recognition in the marketing community that these things, we're not fools in terms of what we're going to get sold to. We want something that works, and we want something that integrates seamlessly as well. So I think there's that point as well, that there's that point of, from the sales process to go live, what's the time scale,
Yeah.
and that learning that the organisation goes through, and also we've had bumps in the road. We've had bumps in the road where the agent has communicated with somebody and they were on the do not email list. All of those sorts of things as well. So, and then that causes much excitement in the business, and everybody says the agent's shit, get rid of it. And you look at it and go, well, that's one reply out of 50 for the week.
It's lucky that you have that queue, isn't it, where you've got the kind of the free quote component, because that immediately moves you to a different cycle in the behavioural kind of process, which that nudge behaviour, it gives you so much data to work with then that the AI must be really learning quickly off the back of, okay, a quote's given, then we have these many interactions. How many touch points is it before we actually convert someone? What does that look like? How are they interacting with it? And that you've got a lot of nice data to play with there. But is it sometimes too much data?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So I think your summary there, Samantha, is academically correct. We've got elements of those data, those touch points. So are we able to look at every single interaction that we've got with the customer? Yes, we can get to that. Do we review that continually?
You'd be constantly
I'd be in a data. I'd have an army of people because even when we've done some journey mapping, you look at the thing you go through with the customer journey. Customer first came to us through SEO, and then orders, and then next time they come round, they click the bloody PPC ad.
Yeah.
And you're going,
how do they do that?
They're diversifying themselves.
Yeah, exactly. You're just making me pay for
There's
you.
nothing stranger than customers.
Yeah, and those sorts of points as well. So the important thing as well with that example is, well, okay, what do you learn from that?
Yeah.
That's the key thing. And that's, I think, the difficulty that we've all got in marketing roles, which is how do you learn from the data that you're seeing? What are you going to do with that data, as opposed to, ta-da, here's the spread of data. This is what's happened over this week. Right, what are we going to do?
And that, I think, is really where the behavioural and the human analytical component comes in. And I think adds a new dimension that AI, as of yet, is not able to add.
Yeah, and I think the other point is as well, certainly for us, which is because we're e-commerce driven, our direct engagement with the customer can be, the touch point can be slightly removed. So actually doing more customer insight, understanding the journey that the customer went through, to actually, well, what was your search journey? What did you do before you got to us?
Yeah.
Understanding that. And we were doing focus groups just before lockdown to try and get into that mode in more detail. We've now started to do more of that across Europe.
Yeah.
Because again, the added challenge is, and this is the really unique thing when you look at the European market, is if we send a short email to a German customer compared to a long email, the long email performs better than the short email.
Amazing. I love behaviour.
Yeah, they want more of the detail.
Yeah.
And they don't want to be sold to. Whereas you take it with a UK customer,
short, concise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You got your A/B test. The short one's winning.
Yeah.
So again, I think it
makes your life more difficult, doesn't it?
Well, it makes it more exciting.
And more exciting.
But I think it's that learning that you go through continually.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, look, time's marching on. I want to do a quick fire question again now. You may not want to answer this, but I'm going to ask it you anyway, because we've talked about AI, automation, customer journey mapping, and integration. What's your tech stack?
So we'll go from, we've got engagement with Google in terms of PPC, that level. We've got standard CRM tools that we're using in terms of management there. We've got also optimization tools that we're looking with Google, so Moz, and some SEO performance tracking tools. We've then got AI sitting in the sales queue as well, and we've then got reporting with Domo. So we're a Domo house in terms of our reporting engine.
And if there's one piece of marketing technology that you were going to recommend to listeners who maybe are not very technologically advanced, what would it be, and where would you start?
I would explore the AI piece. Okay. Certainly, I've been amazed.
Okay.
And I think our own organisation has been, really, it's opened our eyes up to how advanced the technology is, and also how you can apply it. And the final point is, I've got sales agents sitting in the country, so I've got four sales agents. They're part of my sales team, and they've all got names. So I've got Matthew, Simona, Nicole, and Ashley.
Okay.
Amazing.
And they're part of the team.
Wow.
So it's incredible. So I would explore that further for somebody that's looking at this space that's got a transactional element to their sales process.
Brilliant. Well, I can't believe that for more than 40 minutes has shot by since we started talking. But Peter, thank you very much indeed for coming to join us. It's been really interesting.
Thank you, Dom. Thanks,
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, maybe we look forward to getting you back when you guys reach the 2 billion.
Good stuff. Won't be long. Thank you.
Amazing. It's really exciting to get such an internal view of what's going on with the business that you don't necessarily know kind of how big their spend is or what their different things they're trying. I was so impressed by, their tech stack terrifies me.
Yeah, and it was really, Peter went into really some good detail there about a lot of stuff. It's hard knowing where to start, but something that really, really jumped out at me was his advice when you arrive in an organization or if you need to change what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it sounds really obvious, but sometimes when you're faced with these things, you don't think about it. So step one is understand where you are.
Yeah, take a look around you, get to grips with what's there in existence, and don't rush in, I think was something he was saying, wasn't he? You can't change everything overnight. Test and learn was clearly a big part of what they do.
Yeah, so step one, understand where you are. And then two, and again, it sounds so bloody obvious, but a lot of people don't do it. Analyze where your fastest converting opportunities are, which is exactly what he did.
Yeah, absolutely. And then understand how and why that is. And it's really interesting to see if they're doing anything different with those sectors or if it's the same marketing activity that's just converting faster, and really understanding the why, I think then gets them to how they're using things like AI to be impactful.
Yeah. And so, he mentioned those things at the beginning, and then right at the end, he came out with a really great concept, which is, the challenge of marketing is how do you learn from your data?
100%. And I think that's something that is absolutely terrifying for marketing professionals at the moment, because they're constantly being told, measure, measure, measure. We're absolutely inundated with data. But if there's not a kind of through line in the data that you're looking for, if there's not a narrative to overlay it, it's just a lot of numbers that nobody knows really what to do with. And
that's the difference between information and insight, I guess. To 100%. Get insight, you have to be able to understand what's going on. And which brings us to correlation and causation and all those other.
And I love the fact that they are still using human beings to do that, because from my perspective, that really is the right choice. But that's really interesting because they're obviously very advanced with their use of AI. So the fact that they've got that human level to analyze the data and pull out the insights and give them the why, I think says a lot for the way you blend the two.
I think that's interesting because I used to do a lot of work for an SME, and they had one of these pieces of, I don't know what you even call it. It's not middleware, but it sits between you and Google Ads, and it's meant to optimize and automatically bid for you. And if you want to be average, it's great because it will average everything out brilliantly. And I get the point using humans. I mean, not a lot of companies I think have the resource to be able to do that. No. But by the sound of it, from what Peter's saying, actually maybe that's a false saving.
And I think that does seem like the case, right? I mean, it's a really strange situation where you've got him talking about his AI like they're members of his team, but also using human beings to do something most people would try and use some kind of middleware to do. It's clearly something that they've tested and learned how to work with so that it suits their needs, which I think is the key takeaway for marketeers.
Cool. There's one other thing that struck me in this. You've already given the key takeaway. So this is an interesting one. We talked about ABM. You talked about ABM. You introduced ABM, and obviously, it's a hot topic for us. As an organisation, it's a hot topic in B2B. He said, in ABM, or it works where you're strategically important.
It's a really interesting point, isn't it? Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah. So if you talk to a lot of ABMers, they talk about ticket price.
Yep.
They don't necessarily talk about how important you are to the organisation. And I thought that was a really interesting clarification because, the ticket price actually, it depends on how big your target customer is. So £250,000 is a ticket price to a global market leader.
Yeah, exactly.
Is probably too low a ticket price to have the attention of anyone strategically. Whereas for a small company, of course, you may end up being their biggest supplier. So I thought that was a really interesting observation that ABMers would be good to take note of.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think it talks about that whole flow of communications working together, doesn't it? No individual discipline is going to solve the problem as opposed to a really carefully connected set of different things coming together to give you a 360 picture, which clearly they are doing a great job of doing.
So look, you gave us our key takeaway. Then I said there was going to be one more thing. Actually, I'm going to do one more as well.
Okay.
Because this one's really important and it strikes to the heart of who we are, which is that whole balancing utility and magic, building brand for the long term and driving performance in the short term. And in consultancy, this must be something you see all the time. What is the silver bullet?
I think that absolutely is a silver bullet in that it's about understanding your organization and your audience and really appreciating that they are very cyclical, and you have moments where you have to be driving brand awareness much harder and you have moments where you have to be driving kind of direct sales. Obviously, those two channels need to run together all of the time, and I naturally as a brand specialist will lean towards putting more money into brand, but the reality is you can't neglect one child and overfeed the other and have a healthy family.
Well, you know what? On that note, Samantha, I think it's time we end. Thank you very much indeed for listening, everybody. And we will see you next time on Unicorning.
Thank you.
That is the end of today's show. If you would like to subscribe to us, please do go to your favorite podcast outlet and you will find us there. If you want to be on the show, my name is Dom Hawes. Look me up on LinkedIn, connect, and I would love to talk to you. This show is put together by Selby Anderson. We find and unlock hidden value. And the show's recorded at Turnmill Studios, which you can find at turnmillstudios.co.uk. See you next time.